Can you hear that airplane
Oh, yeah.
going by?
Mhm.
God, this damn thing's so sensitive.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select two doors at checkout, and if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean, instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Bringing to you the best stories from icons in the bourbon industry, it's Bourbon Pursuit. Now here are your hosts, Ryan and Kenny.
Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. I'm joined today with my co-host, Ryan. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well, Kenny. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We're actually going to be trying something new today. So we've been primarily going out and taking our laptops and our microphones with us to distilleries and all these people, but we've kind of outgrown that a little bit, right? So we are now expanding across the country, and we've actually reached out to a guest celebrity, I would say. So today on the podcast, we have Blake from Bourbonr.com. And Blake, go ahead and introduce yourself and make sure I'm saying that. Is it Bourbonr or Bourbonr.com? Like, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, you had it right. Bourbonr.com. Yeah. So there needs to be an E between the N and the R, but that domain was taken at the time. So it's Bourbonr.com. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you've built a pretty good brand name around it. I don't think it's worth changing anymore.
I think I do have the domain name now, but yeah, it was like, all right, I'm not going to switch it over and change things up. And so, but yeah, Bourbonr.com. That's it.
Well, good. I mean, I'm very glad you're on the show today because you are probably by far, you're a very big truth in the industry. You're easily one of the biggest bloggers out there on bourbon. So before we kind of get to talking about the website and how you've kind of grown that, let's talk about you a little bit. You know, where did you really get your start into bourbon?
I got into bourbon, and I was trying to think back last night. It was pretty late, probably around 2009, 2010-ish. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, so it's by no means a bourbon capital or anything like that. And just one of those things I really got interested in and just kind of dived in. And I have a tendency to over research any subject or hobby I have. It just kind of snowball effect after that. And just started digging in, and the site kind of came out of that. I was trying to keep track of my own reviews. And so I had a site built that would just keep track of people's reviews and stuff. And that was the original Bourbonr.com. And then I guess it was fall or late summer of 2013, I started the blog just as a way to start throwing posts up of things that I thought was interesting and just different research that I had done. So after the blog got up, it kind of got some early traction with the Pappy release trackers and antique collection release trackers, and kind of been going that way ever since. It's kind of more of a blog now than even a site, but we do have a new app coming out, so that's pretty exciting too. But
tell us a little bit about that new app. What's the new app going to be about? Or actually, I guess give us an explanation of the old app and the kind of two different parts of your website, and then kind of explain also what's going to be coming.
Yeah, so the current app and site, basically you can go on, add whatever reviews you have, add things to your My Whiskey page, just as a way to keep track of everything you drank. If you're at a bar and you have a flight of 5 things, you may not remember exactly each one of them. And so that's what the current app and site has. But then with the new app, it's a lot more social. So think of it as like an Instagram with kind of a review layer on top of that. So if you just buy a bottle, want to show it off to people, other bourbon drinkers, you can do that. But then if you want to add reviews and everything, you can keep track of it as well within the app. So it should be interesting. There's a lot of sites where people like to share and talk about bourbon. And that probably takes a lot more of what people are doing than just adding reviews. So I think the social aspect is a big side of it, because you want to tell people how good it is and also show off the finds you get. So
no, definitely, I can see that. So I guess have you seen since you've seen the blog sort of grow a lot over time, and I know I guess the app was kind of your first venture into it, or are you really thinking like this app is going to be something that you can put your staple on, say like this is what Bourbonr.com is all about? Or do you think maybe it's all about the blog, right? I mean, you've got a good following there, so I guess you're just trying to figure out where do you spend most of your time, trying to figure out what's going to be the best payoff at the end of the day, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of have a little bit of an advantage since it's not a full-time gig. Once the blog started taking off, I started focusing, 90% of my bourbon time on that and 10% on the time. And that's kind of shifted back and forth a little bit, but the hope is that the app will take off as well. And then a little more time will be put towards that. But, I think it's a great app. If other people don't like it, or, they're already happy with how they're keeping track of their stuff, that's fine. I'm happy to keep the blog going. So, I have a little bit of flexibility in there, but yeah, the hope is that the app will really do well and people will kind of come to it and really like it for what it is. So, but at the end of the day, you kind of go with what's working too. So the blog has been very good so far. And I enjoy doing it too. So you can't complain when you're writing and talking about bourbon.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Blake, what was that first bottle, I guess, that got you into, this bourbon habit or blogging and stuff?
I think it was probably, I want to say I had probably my first drink of bourbon was, I don't know how long ago, but it was probably Jim Beam. And I remember drinking it and thinking, this is the worst tasting thing I have, you're a teenager or whatever at the time, thinking, how in the world do people drink this stuff? It's fire. But then, your changes or your your choices kind of improve and that kind of thing. And so Maker's Mark was probably the first actual bottle where I sat down and thought, there's some different flavors here that you don't taste in other stuff. And then it's, a big increase since then. And I actually still do like Maker's Mark, and especially like their cask strength. But bourbon is such a broad category in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to one of the articles you wrote about the evolutionary, I guess you could say the evolution of a bourbon drinker, right? I think we've all related to that. I know one of our first episode, we kind of hinted at that we've all kind of gone through that path as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I wrote that, and it was a very personal, step-by-step thing, but I know there's so many other people who had the exact same progression over the years. So it's kind of funny how everyone takes a very similar path in the bourbon game.
Especially when you read some things that are out there about people that have no idea what good bourbon is, and they're very immature and they don't really know what it is, and so they get a good bottle. Like, I mean, I think I read a story about 10 years ago. Somebody got a bottle of Pappy 20 and they thought it was garbage, so they just basically poured it down the drain, right? Because they didn't know any better, right? And it's one of those evolutionary things, because at the very, very early stages, you can't appreciate what a good bourbon is just because you haven't really had a chance to really experience all the different types that are actually out there.
That's very true. And, you tell new guys, hey, don't chase after all these big, hard to find bottles. Just get a bunch of stuff that is available on the shelf first and figure out what you like. And then you can kind of go from there. People just take it as you're doing it so you have a better chance at getting those bottles. But, if you tell 100 new guys not to buy Pappy Van Winkle, that's not increasing your chances by anything quantifiable. So,
so I guess even when talking about Pappy, I mean, since you live in Jacksonville, it's not Kentucky by any means. Kentucky is absolutely crazy with the bourbon hunting around here. How's bourbon hunting in Jacksonville?
It's actually not bad. I'm kind of in a good middle ground. Maybe I shouldn't say this if there's going to be a bunch of Jacksonville listeners. Yeah. No, but I'm kind of in a good middle ground of there's enough. Like Jacksonville is a fairly big city. There's over 1 million people. So we're going to get distribution of the majority of good bottles and a decent amount of it. But there's not as many bourbon hunters. And it's kind of picking up now. But the Jacksonville or kind of the elite bourbon levels, like the Pappies and antique collections, those kind of things, there's not a whole lot of us chasing after them. Now everyone's after Pappy now, but this year I'll walk into a store and see a Stag that was sitting on the shelf for maybe a month, which that seems like not a long time, but that's forever. And so it's not bad. You can still get the majority of what you want, and I probably put a lot more time into it than I should as well.
We all, but
by this time I know a fair amount of store owners in Jacksonville just because I'm in talking with them, buying from them, that kind of stuff.
Is it ABC in Jacksonville too?
Yes, yeah. So they're they're by far the biggest in the state of Florida, but they only do lotteries on Pappy Van Winkle and William LaRue Weller. So a year and a half later, I've still never won that lottery.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. What do you do? I can't accuse them of rigging a randomization of picking bottles. So.
I like the Florida liquor stores or ABC. I was down in Naples a couple weeks ago and walked in, and there he goes, Weller 12, like just sitting there, and I'm like, I hit the Mecca. And so me and my buddy just shipped, bought 6 or 7 bottles and shipped them back home because it's because of you and your poor man's Pappy post. I can never find Weller anymore. So
I think I was just jumping on a wave that was already starting with that poor man's Pappy post, and it's actually, to be technically correct, it's the straight bourbon blend, or I don't know. I used to get a bunch of comments about guys in straight bourbon, which was where I first read about it. saying that I was stealing it. I'm like, I'm not stealing it. There's nobody who I can cite for it. I can't cite an entire forum but
Well,
ABC, I think it's public knowledge now, but they're the only ones who can sell the Weller line in Florida. So they get a lot of it.
Right.
We brought up Poor Man's Pappy. So I guess for all the listeners out there who have never heard of it before, give us what is Poor Man's Pappy.
Yeah, so Poor Man's Pappy is a blend of 60%. 60% Weller 12 and 40% Weller Antique, and it comes out to around 107 proof. And Weller Antique used to be it's not age dated anymore, but around the 7 to 8 year mark now. And then Weller 12 is obviously 12 years, and so the blend gives you something very similar to like an old Rip Van Winkle 10 year. Originally, it was for the Weller Centennial, which was a 10-year 100 proof bourbon, but it's been discontinued. So that was part of the reason of calling it Poor Man's Pappy on my blog, was no one knows what Weller Centennial is for the most part.
So how did you actually learn about it? I mean, I guess you kind of hinted at it, but where did you find that nugget of knowledge?
Yeah, from Straight Bourbon. And that's the thing about the blog too, is just taking a lot of good information that's kind of in the archives of all these bourbon forums and put it in a little more presentable manner. Or, you can research a lot of stuff there. I've seen Julian Van Winkle popping up and commenting on stuff that people are questioning, what's the source of this? Well, then Julian Van Winkle's in Straight Bourbon talking about, oh yeah, here's the source. So there's a lot. That's where I originally got the Poor Man's Pappy from. But that's I think that originally started with like a Kentucky bar started doing it. So I do a lot of reading, and a lot of my reading is bourbon reading as well. So trying to remember exactly where I got things from is not always easy.
Yeah, I mean that's I guess another good thing to ask you is, with you say you do a lot of reading, but you also have pretty much a lot of interesting articles that are on your site. You become the staple. It's known as a lot of truth behind different kind of bourbons, such as the Pappy Van Winkle laser codes, the secrets behind mash bills, the cheat sheets that are always out there. So I guess where do you kind of come up with these ideas? Because you're a pretty frequent poster too. It's at least one post every week, and it's quality stuff too. So where do these ideas kind of spawn from?
It's things that I've run across that I've had trouble with myself over the years, or just talking with other guys. And I kind of keep an Apple Notes or Evernote notes in my phone of like, oh, that'd be cool. I should write about that. And just kind of, as I go throughout the day, just write things down and then find time here and there to start writing. I have a young son, so he goes to bed early. My wife usually goes to bed early, and I'm like, well, I've got 2 hours to sit around now. I guess I can write some bourbon post.
There you go.
Put all that knowledge to use.
It's just a collection of a lot of different places is where the ideas come from, but a lot of it's just, I know I can't remember all the different proofs of Elijah Craig barrel proof myself. So I'm like, oh, well, here, I'll just put them all on one sheet. I'm like, oh, this would be a pretty cool post. I bet other people would like to do this. I'll just put pictures with it. And then that's kind of the evolution of a Bourbonr post. Just from a small idea and then kind of expanding on it. Some posts, I'll think about it. I'll write it in 30 minutes, and I probably should proof it more than I do. And it'll go up. And then other posts, I'll just kind of write on for a month or so, and they'll kind of change as I go.
Yeah, I mean, you're very right about that presentable format, because you look at Straight Bourbon, you look at these other bourbon forums. Yeah, I mean, they're forums you got to register for, and then you got to, if you want to find information, you got to dig down into the archives of 2008, and even some of the stuff in there isn't even relevant anymore, because they say, well, don't buy that, just spend $20 more and go buy a Pappy 20, which we all know is not possible anymore. So it's definitely a good way that you present in such a way that it's easily Google searchable, so anybody that can get it gets it quickly. So it's a very, very fantastic way of being able to distribute that information.
Yeah, I Googled Pappy earlier and Poor Man's Pappy popped up. It's like the first 3 posts. So that,
yeah, I think at one point I had 3 or 4 links in the first page for Pappy Van Winkle. I don't know if that's still the case, but
yeah, they'll get you on that SEO stuff, that search engine optimization.
Yeah, that's beyond my. The only thing I know about SEO is just write content that people want to read. That's as far as I've gotten. I'm
sure. As soon as they launched that clothing brand, your sites just went right off the front page of Google. So
yeah, that's the joys of having Julian Van Winkle backing your company, I guess, when you have Pappy Co.
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point-of-sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
So kind of talking a little bit more about, the Poor Man's Pappy, you also do a few different posts about vatting and experimentation and mixing bourbons. Is that something that you do regularly and try to talk about, or what's kind of your kind of process behind all that?
Yeah, so that's, I think, kind of the high school level science projects are something that are just fun to me. So I'll do a couple of those posts every now and then, and I'm kind of constantly doing that kind of stuff. I have infused bourbon, vanilla bean bourbon, I think an orange peel and cinnamon infused bourbon that I'm doing now. That's just stuff I like to do, and I find it interesting. So then I turn it into a post. I did a post about the blended bourbon hyper decanting. That was a big thing with wine a few years ago. Whenever Nathan Myhrvold's book came out. So I thought, well, yeah, this probably applies to bourbon too. So I did a testing, and I don't know if it's a placebo effect or what, but it was blind, but there's only 3 choices, and the one that was actually blended in a magic bullet won or was picked as the best by 3 different people. So I'm like, well, maybe there is something to it. So I don't know if scientifically there's actually some science and proof behind that, but on a surface level of, hey, let's try this. This sounds cool. Yeah,
it's funny. It actually went in a magic bullet. I guess that kind of just goes against the regular old, well, just pour a few different things in the decanter and kind of see what happens here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I have a friend in Bardstown. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have a friend in Bardstown that every good bottle of bourbon he puts one shot from it when he opens it up in a decanter, and it's built up since 1983. And so every time he takes a drink, he adds a new shot of bourbon. So Kenny and I thought about starting that ourselves and seeing how that goes.
I'm probably gonna steal that. I'm gonna start doing that. I have a little bit over 2 drinks of poor man's Pappy left in my decanter now. I may empty it and start doing that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat, especially after 20 years. I wonder how they all meld together.
Yeah. And the whole vatting thing is just really interesting too, just to see how it gives you a little bit of perspective of what they're doing at the distillery to pull all these different barrels and mix flavor profiles. Obviously they're working with all the same mash bills.
I mean, you're definitely right about that. I also kind of almost take like maybe almost, I don't want to say anti-stance, right? But there's always got to play, somebody has to play the devil's advocate, because if you think about it, you know, it's like a chef makes you a steak and he brings it out, presents it to you, and you just say, well, where's that Heinz 57? I can,
where's the A1?
Yeah, we're going to pour ketchup all over this thing, right? And so I guess there's actually, there's always two different arguments, because you could think like, well, this is the way that it was intended to be, consumed. But then there's also the thing of, well, we might discover something that nobody else has. So I've even seen one vatting where somebody actually took a shot from Thomas H. Handy and a shot from the Baby Sazerac and mixed them together, because it's the same mash bill, just a little bit different aged. And actually, it's about aged the same closely, but
pretty similar age.
Yeah, different proof levels. And so he just did it as a little experiment. But these are the things that you just got to try out to kind of figure out what you like.
We should probably put a rule on how expensive the bottle can be before you can decant it. Anything below $40 is allowed to be vatted and everything else.
Yeah, vatting a $90 bottle of bourbon doesn't seem very cost effective.
No, not at all.
So what are the other things that you have on your website? Are the Pappy and the BTAC trackers? I've used them constantly, especially this year and last year during the hunts that go on, because it's a good indication, especially the past 2 years, because I think you started in 2013. Is that about the time you started it?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's because really at that point, if you think about it, if you just do this like another 3 or 4 more years, we're going to have all the data we need, that we don't need to look at the map anymore, because we're going to actually have a good kind of like 2-week span. We're going to know when it's going to hit our state or our city or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, I think it's a good idea, because it helps all those hunters out there kind of know, like, well, it's been released, it's coming out there. I don't need to hear on the grapevine from my Uncle Sam, who talked to his cousin Charlie, who knows from their dog that talked to whomever that, it's on the West Coast or the East Coast or whatever. So if you've never been to Bourbonr.com, you've never seen those, and you're going to start thinking about hunting in the spring and for fall, make sure you look at Bourbonr.com and make sure you pay attention to those tracker maps, because they're updated almost daily. And how do you update those?
Very manually. I have a Microsoft Paint map that I use.
Sounds very, very technical.
Sounds antiquated.
Yeah, it's very technical, and no, it's something I probably need to improve on. But yeah, it's just pretty much me. People send me emails. I have a couple different sources now that I get information from. And yeah, just updating it in the blogs and WordPress. So it takes about 30 seconds to do once somebody tells me, where it's been released. But yeah, it's definitely a beginner step. But it's kind of nice to figure out how the release is going across the country too. And then you get people who say that it's only flippers use it and that kind of stuff, which, I don't know how you stop that. There's still plenty of people using it that want to buy it and drink it. So,
I mean, you got to think about it. If you're waiting for that map to get populated before you're going out and looking, odds are you're not going to find it anyway, because it's probably already hit and it's probably already gone. So it always just goes back to making those connections with family, friends, and liquor store owners to try to get those bottles you really, really want, and knowing when to, if you need to camp out, go ahead and doing that.
Yeah. And that's kind of, it really depends on the state. Like, take Florida, for instance. As soon as Miami hits, I know I have about 10 to 14 days for Jacksonville to hit on any major bourbon release. So if, I was watching the map and I saw that Florida hit, I'd say, okay, now I know. But, sometimes they like to throw things up. I think it was Pennsylvania this year who they didn't release until think they didn't release till like after Christmas or something, which was almost
about
3
a week
weeks
before.
behind last year. And so there's still a few states that try to change things up, but like you said, really your best bet is to get a connection with a store owner and kind of play that angle. People like to reward their good customers still, so that's usually your best bet.
Mm-hmm.
Now you may have to spend a lot to become a good customer, and I wouldn't suggest doing it at like one of the big box retailers, because they've got guys buying like $50,000 in wine every year that they're trying to keep happy. Not a guy who buys $500 in bourbon. So
you're right.
But they're a fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to kind of have some excitement around the fall release season every year. So kind of keeping them going for now.
So let's.
I just let Kenny. I was just gonna say I just let Kenny do all the hunting, and then I get to reap the rewards of his of all his hard work. Let you guys go out there and fight each other for it.
Yeah, that's like my brother.
It's 8 p.m. I'm standing in line. Where are you? Oh, okay. Well, I'll be there in a few hours. Just save my spot.
You got my spot? Yeah,
exactly. That's what it's like. So let's talk about your collection. So if you've got this blog and you've got all kind of tasting notes, and you've got your whiskey cabinet, virtual whiskey cabinet on Bourbonr.com. So what does the physical cabinet look like? Like how many bottles do you think you have kind of stashed away?
The physical collection is a bit spread out in my house, and as my son gets older, is getting more and more secure. We have a buffet in our living or our dining room that I have probably 30 bottles in, and then a spare bedroom closet that probably has, oh geez, I don't know if I want to make this number public.
Don't do it.
It's not as bad compared to a lot of guys I've seen, but it's kind of like the drug addict or the addicted gambler saying losing $1 million isn't as bad as losing $100,000. But probably another 90 to 100 bottles in I've got a bookshelf that I keep in a spare bedroom. So several years back. The problem now isn't the open bottles. I'll drink a quarter of a bottle and then I have something new to try. Well, then that quarter bottle or that 3/4 full bottle just gets left behind. So at some point, I think I'm coming to a spot now where I need to stop buying full bottles, just try to get samples and that kind of stuff whenever there's new releases. But yeah, it's a growing collection, and it rapidly grows if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing we've all had to learn is to maybe keep an Excel spreadsheet of what you're actually spending.
Yeah, I did that for all my fall purchases, and it's a good thing and a bad thing. You want to look and know exactly how much you're spending, but then when you look at it, you're like, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't be spending this much.
And definitely don't tell your wife about it.
Yeah, I'm not telling her about this podcast because we did a bottle count one time and it wasn't a good conversation after that.
What's the saying? If you can measure it, then you can manage it. So if you measure it, you got to manage your problem.
That's a good point. Yeah.
What were some of your...
if you go hunting a lot, it's like, all right, I can't walk into 20 different stores and then just walk out because they don't have anything I'm interested in. So I would, if I'm going to a bunch of stores, I may grab a bottle of Baby Saz here and there, or something like that, or an Elmer T. Lee if they have it. And those bottles started to collect over time. So started giving them away as gifts.
There you go.
People are happy with bourbon.
What were some of your favorite releases from 2014?
Really, the best one to me was the Stag. I thought it was excellent this year. And I'm say that as a Stag fan, and you can kind of go back to a lot of previous years. Some of the other ones I thought were good. I thought the Michter's Toasted Barrel was good.
I love that also. It was awesome.
It didn't seem like got a lot of attention, but I really liked it. Let's see, what else? I like a sweeter bourbon. which is probably why I like Buffalo Trace stuff a lot. But then the High West, the Midwinter's Dram, that was good. It's expensive, but I thought it was good. I like how a bunch of different people are doing finishing cask stuff now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of experimentation going on with a lot of different distilleries that, as you've probably found out through all your poking and prodding, they don't like to really hand out a lot of information of what they're trying out.
No, they're pretty tight-lipped when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I've done my best to poke and prod, as you said. But, you know, the funny ones are they'll have the cola registration through the TTB for a logo or a label. And then you go to ask them about it, and the answer is, well, just because we get that approved doesn't mean we're going to release it. I'm like, well, I mean, it sounds like you're going to release it. So could you give me some information about it? Or
yeah, I mean, it was kind of interesting how you just had that post. What was it? Even this week or last week about Very Old Saint Nick coming out with basically making a reappearance, and you just kind of dug around and kind of found that out. What was the kind of process to figure that one out?
A lot of Google searching. I've become pretty good at Google searching. You do site searches for where you think information is going to be, and then just kind of a large database of reading over the past 5 years. You kind of remember stuff here and there, and that helped. But yeah, that's another interesting one because it sounds like it's going to be a U.S. release, but her labels were wrong, which is another big problem. Kind of the whiskey industry is facing today. People aren't putting the correct labels on there. You know, that those things needed to be age stated and needed the state of distillation in them. But it didn't. It just said bottled and produced in California. And there's something about how they use small barrels or something. But, you know, the TTB is pretty clear about that it needs to say distilled in with the state if it's not California. So yeah,
and a lot of people are getting in trouble for that now.
Yeah,
where Angel's Envy and a couple others are getting filed lawsuits against.
Yeah, there's several, like Tito's was a big one for the vodka category. Then Angel's Envy, they have one now, and then obviously Templeton was a big one too. Which it's kind of like who can wash their hands faster in these things, because the TTB, they approve them, but they're not really digging in to make sure everything is correct on the label. And then the label or the brand is saying, well, the TTB approved it. You know, our TTB rep said it was fine. So,
and 3 or 4 years ago, nobody probably would even cared, right? It's just, I think this huge boom, everybody starts to really, really pay attention to these small, minute details, and are very easy to critique people when it's not the way that it's presented.
Yeah, that's very true. And kind of the new line of consumers, they want as much information about a product as they possibly can, where that wasn't necessarily the case before. You know, now I'm looking at what barrel char distillers use and where it was sourced from.
Numbers.
Just all this crazy information that a few years ago nobody released, or only a select few cared to know what it was. But kind of the new bourbon generation that's coming up is really interested in that kind of stuff.
Because wine pretty much does that, right? I mean, they'll say it's aged in this warehouse and is facing this. It's facing the east and the mid-afternoon.
The grapes are in this valley and gets the dew and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's why the bourbon industry, I guess it's unique, and why it's probably so popular is because that's the stories and all the details and all the craft that goes into it. It really appeals, I guess, to our generation, because we're always seeking out, like all that information and the stories.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all the kind of the handmade, made in America movements combining into what bourbon is, which is, on top, it's a great product. So it's interesting to see how that takes over A distiller who's actually really good about that and does about that as much as the wine producers would is Four Roses. They put warehouse, which level, how many barrels deep it was. They put which side of the warehouse was on the west, was on the Sippin' Corn has a post on his blog that lets you decipher what or where exactly that barrel was, which is really interesting because you kind of just look at those labels and think, oh, it's a bunch of numbers. It's probably just marketing, but there's actually a reason for them. So that's made me an even bigger Four Roses fan than I already was. So
imagine how deep that Excel spreadsheet might be.
Oh, dude, yeah. No, I could. That's the kind of stuff where I'm like, I don't know who keeps this database, but hopefully they know what the Microsoft Access or.
Let's hope they're not using that for any other tech geeks out there. But we're reaching the 36-minute mark of this podcast. Blake, I hope you're going to be able to come on the show again because this has definitely been very interesting to talk to you, and I know we could probably just have you on to just shoot around and kind of just talk about all the industry news that's happening. But I guess before we hang up, give us just a little kind of warmer teaser. Is there anything else, besides the new Bourbonr.com app that's kind of happening for 2015 or anything you kind of see on the horizon?
Bourbonr app is the biggest thing, so be on the lookout for that. I got the final version to my phone this morning, so hopefully another couple weeks of just getting some other guys to run through it. And then we'll be launching. So be on the lookout for that. I'll have a promo coming with it of a couple free bottles. So should be good. I'm thinking maybe a Stag or a Old Rip 10-year or something like that.
If you just said free bourbon, I don't think you're gonna have a problem getting some people to try it.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping. I had to go through some legal hoops to make sure that it's okay to give away free bourbon. It won't be coming from me personally, but I will be paying it on your behalf. So
smart move.
Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. And love to come on anytime you'll have me. So
appreciate it.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes. And Ryan, anything else to add before we close out?
No, just thanks again, Blake. And any suggestions, feedback, and comments the listeners have, we'd appreciate it just to know how we do.
Thanks, guys.